Hey, if you have a Bible, I hope you do. Can you open it up to Matthew chapter 18? That's where we're going to be today. Matthew chapter 18. That's the first book of the New Testament, the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew chapter 18. I said it earlier. We're going to start a new series, Hope for the Broken. You know what's really interesting? None of you, if someone actually remembered this in the room, I would be shocked. But this series, Hope for the Broken, I had planned to preach 5 years ago. And it was the spring of 2020, COVID. Again, no one's going to remember this because in the fall of 2019, I became lead pastor. And I remember standing up in front of the church, say, here's what we're going to do for like the school year, because I call ministry year kind of like September through June. I kind of laid out, we're going to like preach on this sermon series, and kind of work our way through this entire thing. And then COVID hit, and I scrapped all my plans, and we preached different stuff. And so finally, guys, 5 years later, we finally returned to Hope for the Broken. We're actually not going the exact same direction that I wanted to then, but I'm using the same title, Hope for the Broken, because we live in a broken world with broken people, but I believe that Jesus, as declared to us in the Bible, offers real hope. So you're in Matthew chapter 18. Let me read to you, though, first Hebrews chapter 6. Here's what the author of Hebrews says. We have this as a sure and steadfast anchor for the soul, a hope that enters into the inner place behind the curtain. Okay, so the author of Hebrews in writing says that we have this. What is the this? We're told it's a hope. So we have a hope that is sure and steadfast. It is very much an anchor. In the storms of life, in the chaos of life, we have a hope that acts as a sure and steadfast anchor. And this hope, we're told, enters into the inner place behind the curtain. We're actually told this: hope has a name. His name is Jesus. Because actually what we celebrated last week, just a little theology for you, is that Jesus, when he died on the cross and he was buried, he was our sacrifice. And what happened at the temple is the high priest, once a year, would go into the inner place, the Holy of Holies behind the curtain, and offer a sacrifice, a lamb, on behalf of the people for their sin. And then Jesus is called the Lamb of God. And so we have a hope. His name is Jesus, and that hope is sure and steadfast, an anchor for our soul. And so what we're going to do, just over the next 4 weeks, it's a short series, we're going to look at how do we point ourselves towards Jesus in the midst of the brokenness around us. Because ultimately, the answer is going to be found in Jesus. But here's what I don't like. I don't like it when people say, man, you're going through a rough time, Jesus is the answer, and we stop right there. Well, that's nice, and I believe 100% true that Jesus is the answer. He's the hope in the midst of our brokenness. But actually, in the Word of God, we're told in many cases why he would be hope in a specific situation. Or we're given a roadmap to get through the brokenness that we experience with Jesus as our hope. And so that's what I want to show you over the next couple weeks. The question I want to answer is really this: what happens at the intersection of hope and brokenness? What happens at that place in our lives? And to be human is to live in a world that is broken. And the Bible tells us that it's broken because of sin. You feel it. I feel it. We all feel it. Our bodies are breaking down. There's a brokenness there. We have relationship brokenness. Our government is broken. Our behaviors are broken. It's all broken. Here's why. Because of sin. That's what the Bible says, that all things are broken because of sin. And today what I want to do is speak on the topic of broken relationships. One of the hardest things to work through in life is a broken relationship. Is that not true? Some of the greatest pain in your life has come from relationships that have been broken. Maybe a relationship with a friend, a relationship with a parent, a relationship with a child, a sibling, a spouse, The relationship has been broken, and it just causes a lot of real pain in your life. And so I understand that today especially that there might be some like kind of pulling off of some wounds there. It's okay, because we have to kind of press into this, I think, to see where hope is offered in the midst of the brokenness. There is this not true? There is a ripple effect in our lives because of the broken relationships you've experienced in your past. There's this adage people say, hurt people hurt people. You ever heard that before? That because of hurt that you've experienced over here, some kind of relationship hurt, it ends up bleeding over into other relationships. That things that happened here come out over here. The brokenness there bleeds into other things. So the question is, how do we find hope in the midst of all of that? What does the Bible have to offer us in the midst of all of that brokenness? When you go to a counseling room, you ever hear someone say this? Sir, your problems stem from healthy relationships with your parents, siblings, and friends? No. Said no one ever, right? You've never heard that, because when you sit down in a counseling room, the counselor doesn't say back to you, oh man, all those problems you have, it's all because of all those healthy relationships. No, it always goes back to, oh, well, yeah, what about this? What about this relationship and this decision and how that played out? And here's the reality. I think this is true. Healthy relationships with people, whatever context that might be, family, friends, in the workplace, it's what you want, right? I don't think anyone's going to be, man, I just hope for more unhealthy relationships this week. I hope things get worse. No one. We want healthy relationships. We want to live that kind of like peaceful life. But how do we chart a course forward when the reality is we have broken relationships? How do we move forward? Now, let me set this up by telling you about the first car I ever bought. Now, I've told you, I know you know about my car. The first car I ever drove was a 1985 Buick Regal. It was my grandma's. She gave it to me. I drove it through high school. It eventually blew up. But then between high school and college, that summer, I worked all summer, saved my money. I've probably told you about this car before. And I bought a 1985, again, Honda Accord. It was a white four-door. Saved all my money, $1,000 purchase to buy that Honda Accord that I would drive all the way through college. And in fact, even into my marriage, and then my wife was like, we gotta get rid of that car. But that car, it had a couple problems that developed, not when I bought it, but over time. Number one problem, probably the most serious problem, was that when you were driving down the road with the headlights on, if you turned on the right-hand blinker, the headlights turned off. I have no idea why. So it led to, while driving at night, in the dark, the headlights are on, one of two choices. Either you don't use a blinker, or you only turn left, which is possible. You can do a full loop and make the turn, right? I don't know why it was broken, but it was broken. I had no idea how to fix it. Another problem that this car had was the sound system. The radio actually would go from 0 to 100 unannounced. So while driving down the road, you'd just be listening to music, and then it would just be boom, like speakers blowing out. You'd have to press power and turn the thing off, and it reset itself, which was, I think, super funny when someone borrowed my car. And then they would report back, dude, you won't believe what just happened. They're going crazy. It's possessed. I don't know how to fix that either. Something was wrong, and no idea how to fix that. It also had a problem. The driver's side window, it was a manual, up and down. But I would get the thing up there and get it locked in place. If you just started to crank it down a little bit, the window would actually just fall straight into the door, which is why I kept pliers in the glove box. You could reach in and pull it back up, and I'd get it up there and get it locked all back in place again, which, again, was really funny when I'd have friends with me and we'd go to McDonald's, drive-through, and I'd pull up, but I'd pull up really far so the back seat could roll down their window and pay for the food. Again, no idea why it was broken. No idea. You might be smart enough, no idea how to fix it. One time I was driving down the road, and it turned out, I didn't know it, but my alternator had gone out. Therefore, the alternators was powers your battery, I guess. I'm not a car guy, but helps to give it will keep power to your car. So I'm cruising down the road, the alternator goes out, and so my car literally just loses power while driving. It turns off, and I get pulled off the side of the road. It won't start. It's dead. I'm like, I need to jump it, try to jump it. It lasts another 200 yards before it dies again because it's not actually fixing the problem. I ended up getting it towed and had to get someone, take it to a shop and get the thing fixed. Again, it's broken. I didn't know how to fix it. We need someone else to come in. And actually, what did the car in was, I guess there was like a leak in the radiator, and so it's just kind of like leaking like liquid all the time. And I don't know how to fix something like that. I didn't want to pay money to fix it. So here's what I did. I just carried around like gallons of water in my car. And every time I drove somewhere, I just fill it back up with water so it wouldn't overheat. And as soon as it began to overheat, I filled up some more. And that's how I kind of pieced that thing together until finally it was just absolutely done. Now, and I eventually, actually, I just scrapped it, like got rid of it. I wouldn't even sell it to anybody because it was just done. Now, here's what I want you to grab onto. You're gonna like this, I think. Relationships, kind of like my relationship with cars. Okay, now hang on here. Okay, you're gonna understand this. Cars are easy to start. Any of you can start a car. You put the key in there and you turn it. It's not complicated. Relationships, they're pretty easy to get into. I know, like, some of you are super awkward, so it's hard to get into a relationship. But like, really, like, starting we kind of fall into relationships in our life. They're easy to start. And really, they're easy to drive when healthy, right? We kind of move forward. We enjoy them. It's going well. But then when the relationship breaks, when we're hurt by someone, when we feel like we've been used or lied to in some way, something has happened that's broken the relationship, we end up in a place like with my car, and I'm like, yeah, it's broken, but I have no idea how to fix it. No idea. Why? Because you are not, as humans, we're not born knowing how to fix relationships, how to fix the thing that is broken. And so what ends up happening is we have a number of different, options, I guess, one of which is what I did with nearly every problem in my car. I just ignored it and adapted. Maybe pretend like it's not really there, acknowledge it's there, we're not really going to fix anything, we're just going to kind of live through this. But in the end, it just all gets scrapped, and this is what happens in your relationships. You do that long enough, never really pressing into the brokenness, never really looking to see how do we fix these things, eventually the relationship just gets scrapped. I mean, that's like what naturally happens, or you just live miserable. Nothing ever actually goes the way we want in the terms of a healthy relationship. So let's just kind of think through this together. Relationships break. You've been hurt by others. And what I mean by that, even think in your head, like, who's betrayed you? Who has lied to you? Who has lied about you? Who's mistreated you? Who's taken advantage of you? Who's hurt you? My guess is that over the course of our life, you could identify a number of people. In fact, you could probably identify a number of people. That's the current state of the relationship. It's a roommate who stole something that you had. Could have been a kid from elementary school days who bullied you, said stuff about you online. It's a boyfriend that lied to you and ended up lying about you. And maybe a dad who you simply wanted to just spend time with and to please, and yet everything he said seemed to make you feel small and insignificant. It could be a spouse that you trusted and you believed in who betrayed your trust, who crushed your hearts. It could be an authority figure in your life, someone that you admired, someone that should have protected you, but that person did not protect you. Instead, they used you. Relationships are broken. And the Bible is actually, this is littered with broken relationships, with siblings who lie to each other. Cain killed Abel. Joseph is sold into slavery by his brothers. David commits adultery and then has the girl's husband killed. This is a lot of brokenness, a lot of broken relationships. In the New Testament, Peter and Paul have a number of disagreements. I think at the very least you'd say they weren't best friends, and yet they wrote so much of the New Testament for us. Judas, one of the 12, betrayed Jesus. There's a lot of broken relationships. Why? Because we live in a world that is scarred by sin. We live in a world where relationships break. Relationships are messy, and sin complicates how you and I relate to each other. So that was a lot of intro right there. I think we're all on the same page now. We live in a world where there is brokenness. And the question is, how do we move forward in this world? And the reality is this: the path to restoration and reconciliation isn't a straight line. Here's what I don't have for you today. I just want to show my cards. I don't have this for you today. I don't have a 3-point sermon of how to fix your marriage. It's not a 3-point sermon on how to restore things with your dad. It's not 5 points on how to move past abuse in your past, because that sermon doesn't exist. It's not there. It's not a straight path. It's not going to be the same for each of us. But I think the first step is the same, and that's what I want to speak to today. I think the first step in what will be reconciliation or restoration, it begins the same. It all starts in the same spot, and it starts with one word: forgiveness. So let me say it this way: hope for the broken relationships begins with a decision to forgive. Hope for whatever broken relationship might be in your life, it begins with a decision to forgive. Now, unforgiveness is like a virus that will destroy your relationships. Unforgiveness is a prison that you lock yourself in even though you hold the key. Carrie Fisher said it this way: resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. That's what resentment's like. Bitterness, it just has a way of actually destroying us. So I know this. It's not going to be easy, because there's real hurt here, there's real brokenness in this room, but I want to take you to a story that is told by Jesus about forgiveness, and I think we're going to learn some really important things that are going to help you. Listen, not it's going to get us on the path towards reconciliation. But the thing about forgiveness is that forgiveness is something that you control, but you can't control the other person. And reconciliation takes two people, and we're only speaking to your side. We used to have a guy in our church, Blaine Higa. He interned here. You might remember him, led worship. He gave a sermon on reconciliation once, and he said that you're only responsible for your side of the road. You can't control someone else's side of the road. You can't clean it up. You can clean up yours. You can't clean up theirs. Reconciliation requires both, but you can do your side. And today we're just going to begin with this: forgiveness. And there's more things that might have to happen in the relationships you have with people for there to be reconciliation, for things to be made whole. And I believe 100% that it's possible by the power of God and the grace of God, the Holy Spirit in our life. That's possible. But the first step has to be this: a decision that you make to forgive. So let's go to Matthew 18 now. I want to read to you starting in verse 21. It says this: then Peter came up and said to him, that's Jesus, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times? He's like, hey, if someone offends me, if my brother has sinned against me, how many times should I forgive him? 7 times? And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Or some versions actually look at it as 70 times 7. Just this huge number. You have to keep on forgiving. And then Jesus is going to give us a parable, a story for us to understand what forgiveness is. Let me give you the point of the story, and then we'll work through it, okay? Here's the points. Forgiveness is giving to others what Jesus has given you. This is what we're going to learn today. Forgiveness is giving to others what Jesus has given you. Let's walk through the story now. Verse 23, here's Jesus' story, the parable. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. Now stop right there. It begins by telling us specifically the realm in which he is speaking. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to this. This is what it looks like to live in the kingdom of heaven. And then he presents to us a number of different characters. Now we see in this first verse up here is the king and a servant. We're going to have a king, we're going to have a servant. What we're going to see in a second is there's going to be a fellow servant, and then there's going to be a crowd of people, many servants, watching what is taking place in this. Let's keep reading. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with the servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him, now underline this, 10,000 talents. That's a lot of money, guys. Let me try to paint a picture of how much 10,000 talents is. There were, at this time, 4 provinces in Israel under the control of Rome, and people living in those 4 provinces were taxed, actually incredibly high rates. They were taxed to send money back to Rome. In a single year, get this, in a single year, Rome would collect about 900 talents from all the provinces. Rome, from all the provinces in Israel, in 1 year would only collect 900 talents. Now, just to kind of put it in perspective, it would take this servant who's been brought to the king, who has a debt of 10,000 talents, it would take him more than 11 years for Rome to collect all that money. Today, most people actually equate this money not with this man owed millions. This man didn't even owe billions. He owed trillions of dollars. It's a story he's telling. It's hyperbole. Actually, what he's saying is this: it is an incalculable, unpayable debt. That's what's being illustrated here. This man is brought before the king. He's a servant. There's a debt. It's incalculable. It is unpayable. And the reality is, and we're going to see this, it is a perfect example of the relationship between you and God. That you have an incalculable, unpayable debt called sin. For the wages of sin is death. It is unpayable. You cannot pay it on your own. We have a sin problem. That sin problem is not something that we can fix. We'll never fix it on its own, which is why some kind of like theology of self-help is laughable. Read all the self-help books you want, and it will not deal with sin. Cannot. So it's obvious as we read through the story that the debt is so large it can never be repaid. Now, the common course of action would be to sell the man, sell the wife, sell the children, everything he owns, then to slavery, sell everything off in hopes of like regaining what was lost. So you actually could translate it this servant that's then brought before this king, his life is over, he'll never recover. That's actually what's taken place. His life is over, there is no recovering from what is taking place. Now look at verse 26, because the servant, verse 25, I guess we'll just keep reading. And since he could not pay his master, ordered him to be sold with his wife and children, all that he had, and payment to be made. You owe me it all. Verse 26, so the servant fell on his knees, imploring him. He's begging, have patience with me, and I will pay you everything. And everyone who hears this story responds differently than you just did, because they all respond with laughter. They're like, what? Like, it's laughable. Hey, king, just be patient. Give me a little bit more time. I'll be able to scrape the trillions of dollars together in order to give it back. It's not actually possible at all. What's interesting, though, I think in the story is that he actually believes he can. Just be a little bit, I know, if it just give me a little bit more time, if I just work hard enough, if I just save long enough, I'll be able to pay everything back. As if, man, if I just go to church, if I just do enough good, if I just serve those in need, if I just give enough money, somehow that will set all things right. But what Jesus is showing us is this servant, the debt that he owes, it doesn't require more time. It doesn't require harder work. There's actually only one thing that's going to work for him, and it's the word that we're talking about today, forgiveness. So the king responds to the plea in verse 27. And out of pity for him, the master of the servant released him and forgave him the debt. Did you catch what happened? 1, he released him. He didn't throw him in the jail, and he forgave him. In other words, he cancels the debt. You no longer owe it to me. Now, we learned something, I think, right here. Incredibly, incredibly instructive and important to us about forgiveness. In forgiving, rather than retaliating, rather than throwing this guy in prison, rather than trying to shake and get everything out of him, in forgiving, rather than retaliating, he is making a choice to bear the cost himself. When you choose to forgive someone, forgive their debts, because whenever there is something that is, when relationships are broken, it is almost always because of something lost. They have done something to you, you have lost time, you have lost energy, you have lost emotion, you have lost something has been given away. Forgiveness is a commitment not to make them pay you back, but for you yourself to absorb the cost. There's $1 trillion here, of which the king is going to have to pay for himself because he had given it, apparently, and now he will not get it back. Maybe, like, for example, if a friend borrows your car and wrecks it driving, and they don't have any ability to pay for that wrecked car, you have two choices. I mean, you could take them to court, you could sue them, you could get the money back, or you could simply say this: I forgive you. Forget it. You no longer owe me. But the price of the wrong does not evaporate, right? You either now have to pay for the fix, or you have to bear the cost of walking everywhere now because you no longer have a car. And so when this master says release him and forgive him, we're learning that this choice to forgive is actually a choice to say, I'm going to bear the weight of this. I'm not going to make you pay for it yourself. There was a German pastor, Helmut Thickel, who endured some just really terrible things during the Nazi Third Reich. He wrote this: one should never mention the words forgive and forget in the same breath. We remember, but in forgiving, we no longer use the memory against others. Forgiveness is not pretending that the offense did not really matter to us. It did, and it does matter. There is no use pretending otherwise. The offense is real, but when we forgive, look at this, the offense no longer controls our behavior. What they did to me, the brokenness that has been caused, here's what forgiveness is. I am no longer going to take it out on them. Or you might say it this way: forgiveness is choosing to not hold it against them, whatever the it may be, the hurts, the offense. We no longer use that memory against them. It no longer controls our behavior. Actually, the decision to forgive, this commitment, it involves three things. One, it's a commitment to this: I'm not going to keep bringing this up to the other person. That's not forgiveness. So commitment number one is I'm not going to keep bringing this up to the other person. It's also a commitment: I'm not going to keep bringing this up to others in an effort to diminish their reputation, to make them look bad, to make myself feel better. It's a commitment also that I'm not going to keep bringing this up to myself. No one said forgiveness is easy, guys. It's a commitment to say, I'm not going to hold it against them anymore. I'm not going to work out in my mind how I can get back at them. This is so true, is it not, in marriage? If you choose to forgive, doesn't mean you can bring it up 6 months from now. That's not forgiveness. You also can't keep sitting in your bitterness. You have to choose to change your thinking. Now, I said this from the beginning. I want to remind you of this. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It's just the first step on your side. So there's more work to be done for a relationship to find reconciliation, to find wholeness, for a togetherness to be back. Forgiveness doesn't mean also that we automatically trust again. It's not just because I forgive them doesn't mean I choose to not have boundaries set up in the relationship. Just because I choose to forgive doesn't mean all of a sudden the relationship returns to exactly where it was. There might be things that are lost in that relationship that cannot be recovered. It's a decision, though. I'm not going to hold it against them anymore. This is hard. But Jesus is actually teaching us about where our hope is found when it collides with the brokenness of our relationships. And he does this actually by showing the most bizarre response to this forgiveness the servant has been offered. Look at verse 28. But when the same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. Now stop right there, underline it, 100 denarii. Now a denarii is a 1-day wage. If you work for, 8 hours, you'd get paid 1 denarii. So this man is owed 100 days' wages. It is not, I want to make a point of this, it is not an insignificant amount at all. It's a lot of money, 100 days. None of you would want to work 100 days and then have your employer say, not paying you. Like, that doesn't make any sense. you would be upset about. This is no small amount, but when compared to 10,000 talents, it is a very insignificant amount. It's very small. And so as we talk about forgiveness, I want to make this point at least, is that we're not talking about insignificant things. This 100 denarii isn't something we can just overlook and move on, because forgiveness isn't just overlooking. You can't just overlook injustice and deception, humiliation. They're not insignificant things. Emotional, physical, sexual abuse are not insignificant things. Cheating, betrayal, it's not insignificant. Manipulation, lying, slander, neglect are not insignificant. Theft, hatred, cruelty are not insignificant. But what the story is helping us understand is, let's see how we have been offended, how we have been hurt in light of what we have received from Jesus in the first place. Because remember what we said? Forgiving is treating others as God has treated me, as Jesus has treated me. So then when we come back to verse 28, this 100 denarii that's owed him, the guy can't pay it, and seizing him, and he began to choke him, saying, "Pay what you owe." I mean, this is a wild story. He just got forgiven this incredibly large debt. He walks out of the room. He sees a man who owes him 100 denarii, and what does he do? He seizes him, chokes him, and says, "Give it to me. I need it." His lack of mercy is on full display. It's really signaling to us that he never really understood the mercy he had just received. Verse 29, so his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, "Have patience with me, and I will repay you, and I will pay you back." Does that remind you of anything? That's literally the same line this servant had just given to the king, the master. But it doesn't trigger his thoughts, because look at verse 30. It says this: he refused. Can you circle, underline that, highlight that? He refused, and went and put him in prison until he should pay the debts. He refused, defined as he was unwilling. It's not that he could not, it's that he would not. The reason why the words of Jesus, I think, are so hard for us is because he's asking us to do something that so often we are unwilling to do. Because I think what's forgotten so often is forgiveness doesn't just flow to us. It's actually intended to be something that flows through us. That because I've been forgiven, now I can offer forgiveness. I can choose not to hold it against them anymore. And verse 31 tells us the response, the same response that you and I would have. And when his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed. You should be greatly distressed by this. And they went and reported to the master all that had taken place. And what we're being taught as we read this is that if you are here and you call yourself a Christian, a follower of Jesus, one who has been forgiven in incalculable, unpayable debts, it ought to cause great distress when even we see each other not choose to forgive. And it ought to cause great distress in your own life when you have been forgiven much, but choose not to forgive others in response. So here's the point, actually. Measure your forgiveness of others by his forgiveness of you. That's the measurement. Measure your forgiveness of others by his forgiveness of you. Our capacity to forgive is in direct relation to our understanding of his forgiveness. That's why, listen, that's why you can't leave here today and say this: I will try harder not to hold it against them. No. It's actually about going deeper and deeper into the gospel and what it says about you. It compels us to forgive others. I call it gospel-powered transformation, not self-help transformation. If you look deeper into the cross and the forgiveness we receive there in Jesus, it transforms the way you live. You have been given much. Measure your forgiveness of others by his forgiveness of you. We actually have to see things, I think, in very much in the way that a child does. My son Tucker, he's 2, almost 3 years old. We went to a Mariners baseball game. And just a couple days ago, went to a Mariners game. We're a big baseball family, and we're sitting out in right field. And in order to get the 2.5, 3-year-old through a baseball game, you have to bring a lot of snacks. That's really the only way you can get through it with him not losing his mind. And so there's a couple different containers of snacks. One of them is full of pretzels, like little pretzel sticks. It's all jammed in there. And he takes that. And there's 6 of us in our family. We have 5 seats, and then Tucker. There's people sitting either side of us, and he gets his little box of pretzels. And man, I just love how children, they just don't think about things the way you and I might think about it, because he immediately takes that and he just walks to each person in the family. Piper, you want a pretzel? You want a pretzel, Caden? Judah, you want a pretzel? Comes to me. You want a pretzel? Then he works his way back down, handing out the pretzels just to get him. There's no thought in his mind that he could run out of pretzels. I mean, it's just a lot of pretzels. He's got a lot. He's going to give them away. There's a stranger sitting next to me. I've never met this guy before in my life. He's a Mariner fan, though. And Tucker says, pretzel? And you could tell the guy was like, I don't know. And I was like, take it, man. So he takes it, and he eats the pretzel. And you can't tell the 2.5-year-old no to the pretzel that's like being given out here. In a very similar way, like we have to measure our forgiveness of others by his forgiveness. I got all of this here. It's all been given to me. I don't need to withhold that. And I know we say things like, well, if I forgive, he'll never understand the severity of what took place. Man, if I forgive, I'm just going to look weak. If I forgive, she wins. If I forgive, it just means I've been burned again in a long list of being burned. If I forgive, don't you realize they don't deserve forgiveness? They actually only deserve punishments. You might even say something like this: forgiveness is not possible for this. You don't understand. It's not possible. They aren't even sorry. They blame me. Measure your forgiveness of others by his forgiveness of you. Just like Tucker walking down there. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. You've been forgiven much, so you can forgive. 2 things. 1, here's what you got to remember. Number 1, first, I'm a sinner, forgiven. 2nd, I'm one sinned against. Don't get it out of order. Don't get it out of order. We have to understand I'm a sinner who's been forgiven. 2nd, I am one who is sinned against. How would your view change of this other person if you first saw yourself as one overwhelmingly forgiven? When we see our own need for grace, we become more willing to extend it for others. It's not that there won't ever be hurtful things said, that actions that have been done to us, the ways we've been wronged, aren't significant, but we can still choose to step into forgiveness. Secondly, forgiveness is about responding to Jesus, not to the other person. Would you grab onto that? The whole point of the parable is the servant missed his response to the master, the king. It's about responding to Jesus, not to the other person. Forgiveness is seeking truth of the gospel for it to work in our life. It's believing that we have first been forgiven. The debt has been erased, a debt that we could never pay. So at the intersection of hope and broken relationships, here's what we find. It's forgiveness, actually, offered to you. Because the first broken relationship is between you and God. And as that is restored, it started with forgiveness. As Jesus moved towards us, now you can move towards reconciliation with people through the act of forgiveness. It's not by mustering up more power, like willpower to forgive. It's by seeing the other person through the lens of the cross. It's not your job to make them pay. You can forgive like Jesus. So forgiveness is giving to others what Jesus has given you. The debt has been paid. I love reading the writings of Corrie ten Boom. Maybe you've read her writings too. She lived through concentration camps in Nazi Germany as well. She said this, and I think this is powerful. Even as the angry, vengeful thoughts boiled through me, I saw the sin of them. Speaking of her captors, she sat in a cell. Jesus Christ had died for this man. Was I going to ask for more? Lord Jesus, I prayed, forgive me and help me to forgive him. Jesus, I cannot forgive him. Give me your forgiveness. And so I discovered that it is not on our forgiveness any more than on our goodness that the world's healing hinges, but on his. When he tells us to love our enemies, he gives along with the command the love itself. And so I think it's possible that as we sit in this room, you say this: I like the idea of forgiveness. That sounds great. I just can't do it. You're right. You can't. And so maybe the first step, before we leave here and say, man, I'll make a commitment to not hold something against somebody, is actually you have to start by praying, God, I need to see my forgiveness in a more clear way. And God, I need your strength. I need to be poured into me so I can respond to the broken relationships around me. So, I'll ask again, who's hurt you? Who's wronged you? Who are you holding a grudge towards? Who are you unwilling to forgive? Maybe it's in a marriage, maybe it's family, maybe it's friends, maybe it's a boss. It's when you see forgiveness poured out on you that you begin to pour it out on others. So would your prayer be this simple prayer today? God, I want to see your forgiveness of me more. And as a result of that, would we see forgiveness poured out in your broken relationships? Let me pray for you. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the words of Jesus. God, you call us to difficult things, to forgive our enemies, to forgive those who hurt us, to love those who persecute us. But God, you don't leave us alone to do that. I pray, one, that we would see you, the gospel, more accurately, that we would see you as one who has forgiven us. An incalculable, unpayable debt, God, you paid on the cross. And God, as a result of that, God, would you give us the strength and the grace, the mercy, the courage needed to not hold the sins of others against us, against them. I pray that we'd release, that we'd stop living in a prison cell that we've created in unforgiveness, but we would find freedom, God, in choosing to forgive others. God, I pray these things in your name. Amen. As we sing these last two songs, it's possible that you're servant number one and you have never received the forgiveness that God has offered. It's been offered to you, but you have not received it. I want to give you a chance to respond as we sing these last two songs. You can pray where you're at. God, I know I've sinned. I know it's separated me from you, but God, I also believe that you died on the cross, you were buried and rose again. The Bible says if you believe that, you are saved. We have a tradition in our church that people who've chosen to follow Jesus, that we invite them to come up. We have a prayer team up here that'd love to pray for you. But if you made that decision today, maybe you made it in the past week, maybe after Easter last Sunday, you went home and you were thinking about it, you just prayed alone in your bedroom. I'd love for you to come up during these last two songs and screw a light bulb in. You have been made new. You've moved from darkness to lights, and we want to celebrate with you. Secondly, we do have people up here who'd love to pray for you. And so if you have just been struggling, maybe there's someone that's a broken relationship and you're like, I need the strength to forgive. I can't do it. I invite you to come up. They'd love to pray for you, that you would see your forgiveness, God towards you, and then you'd be able to give that to others. Would you stand?